The weekend comes, so do the movies, and so does Michael Snyder out there in Hollywood, California. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Alex, and Happy New Year to you and the GABNet audience and all our crew buddies and anybody who tunes in. Happy to be here and happy to start anew in 2016.
Yeah. The theme's almost over with. I should have taken a longer time getting into it. Anyway, go ahead. Tell them what's up this week.
Okay, so we do have some new movies, even though this isn't necessarily the dead zone in the movie business, because, you know, the big films have already been released in general in December for Oscar consideration, so they start trickling out things that are on the shelf.
You got to remember that a lot of the films that they wanted for Academy Award nomination were released prior to the first of the year, but not to all the markets around the United States, but only in the major markets. So they're getting films now like Revenant and so on that they wouldn't have been able to see before. Yeah.
True. The Revenant has opened wide, and it's actually, if you're going to talk about films that are opening wide this week, that's the one people should see. It's a beautiful, sprawling, widescreen look at this fur trapper under very extreme circumstances. Great performances by Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hardy.
Well, it's also great filmmaking. I mean, it's just it's a gorgeous looking film about a very grisly subject. You know?
Yeah, great stuff, and by the director of last year's Birdman, Alejandro Inarritu. Great stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does come out new this week? The Forest is the big release, believe it or not. And when it comes to Japanese horror movies, we've had The Ring and The Grudge and The Curse, and now we have The Forest, which isn't strictly a Japanese movie, although it's largely set in Japan's so-called suicide forest, where people go to kill themselves or allow themselves to be killed by supernatural forces as they wander and get lost, or are there supernatural forces in this forest, or is it just tricks of the mind? Anyway, Sarah is a young American woman, a young wife, played by the lovely and compelling Natalie Dormer of Game of Thrones. She's Marjorie in Game of Thrones, and The Hunger Games, where she shaved half her head, a much smaller and less important role. But apparently she only does things with game or games in the title. Nope, she's doing The Forest. And she learns that her twin sister, who is teaching school in Japan, has disappeared after a trek into that very forest, the Aokigahara forest. And so, of course, it's a horror film, so she decides to go look for her and is heedless in her pursuit. She's accompanied by this arrogant, backpacking American Romeo type, know-it-all, played by Taylor Kinney of The Vampire Diaries and Chicago Fire, and a very skittish Japanese guide, a young man who only has their safety and best interest at heart, and so they ignore him, of course. So anyway, you got Natalie Dormer, and you got some creepy Japanese schoolgirl demon ghosts, and a couple of okay twists, but it's pretty weak sauce with the usual knee-jerk scares. You know, watch it on video maybe. Not terrible, but certainly nothing very memorable. Well, a darker and even creepier movie is the best release of the week, other than The Revenant. It's called Lamb, and it concerns a broken man in his 40s whose marriage has fallen apart and whose father has died. And for some reason, he's inexplicably drawn to a young girl he meets in a parking lot. And what I'm talking about here is a 11-year-old girl. This is a 47-year-old man, and he sees that she's being kind of manipulated and taunted by her friends, and he invites her over to where he's sitting, and also invites her to take a ride with him in his car. And it's the recipe for horrible pedophilia, danger, and like nightmarish circumstances, but it's much more than that. And they actually end up going off on a road trip. Ross Partridge is the actor and director and screenwriter who put this thing together, and he plays the 47-year-old David Lamb, and he's discovered a real find in Una Lawrence, who's Tommy, the girl, and any implications like Lolita type stuff works in this movie's favor, because you're on the kind of fence about whether this guy is a decent guy who's just reaching out to this poor child, or whether he's a horrible predatory monster. And all of this ends up as resulting in a very compelling story, really exciting and kind of dramatic movie that I really recommend you seek out. Joel Murray, of all people, is in like basically one scene. Tom Bauer, a terrific character actor, has a small role in this. Scoot McNairy, but basically this is a two-hander with David Lamb as the main character and Tommy as the female lead. Ross Partridge and Una Lawrence in Lamb. Recommended, but creepy as all get out. Okay, Anesthesia is a sort of it's an ensemble drama, and it's set in New York, and it works pretty well, but it's not going to be favorably compared to things like Babel. But you do have Sam Waterston as a professor who encounters a knife after trying to pick up something lovely for his wife, who's played by Glenn Close. He has a student who is abusing herself. She's played by Kristen Stewart. There are other various characters embroiled in this story, including Gretchen Mol as a wife who wants to find herself in the big city, and also Jessica Hecht as the professor's daughter-in-law. And everything's sort of interactive, and coincidences are called coincidences because they're coincidences, I guess, because these people sort of interact and things get more dramatic and frenetic. It's written and directed by the actor Tim Blake Nelson, and it's not bad, mind you, but compared to the sort of emotional power and tension generated by Lamb, you kind of wish there was more of that going on here. Corey Stoll is in the film. I mean, you can't complain about the cast and performances, and it's actually a pretty thoughtful movie. But, again, I think it's just going to get lost in the shuffle. Let's wrap it up with Diablo. Clint Eastwood's son, Scott Eastwood, tries to pick up the trail his old man used to ride as the lead in this sort of half-assed Western movie about a Civil War vet whose wife is kidnapped by bandits and has to face off against them, doing awful things to save the woman. Anyway, Scott Eastwood, his previous big role was as the sullen, sensitive bull rider who falls in love with the cute, brainy art nerd played by Britt Robertson of Tomorrowland in a movie called The Long Ride, or The Big Ride, or Long Rider, whatever it wasn't that memorable. It was a wimpy Nicholas Sparks romance, and it seemed to have more genuine guts and glory than Diablo. Diablo looks pretty good on the cinematography and locations front, but as hard as the actors and the filmmakers try, I never felt any of that old Eastwood gravitas from Scott or the film. I mean, the kid's okay, but it's kind of like Clint Light. Nice work from Danny Glover. And the chief villain is played by Walton Goggins, who is in such a better Western vehicle that's out right now. And the comparison with that movie, The Hateful Eight, is very unflattering, where The Hateful Eight is darkly funny and thrillingly violent, specifically in the last half. Diablo wants to be deep, but it just comes off as sort of plodding and heavy-handed. Again, not a great film, but, not terrible. Not terrible. I just felt like I didn't feel embarrassed for anybody. So that's it. That's what's out there.
I didn't feel embarrassed for anybody. That's that's faint praise.
Well, right. That's the best I can say about this. I wish I could.
Yeah. No, I understand.
What are you watching anything in movies?
Well,
TV,
I've been watching everything that's been nominated for the SAG Awards because I get them, I've seen. I'm still waiting for some of them to come, like Steve Jobs, and there's one other film I wanted to see. But we've seen a lot of them, of all of them, Revenant just absolutely blew me away. I didn't expect to like it, and it is just such a well-crafted, well-done film. Great performance by DiCaprio. I really think it's the best film of the year so far. I have
to say, I'm impressed with it. I thought it was one of my favorite films this past year. But I also have to suggest, and you can look at it any way you like here, that it's sort of a dark ride. I don't know.
It's a very dark ride. It's incredibly dark.
How many people are actually? Speaking of rides, I'm now remembering the movie. The Scott Eastwood film is the longest ride. That's the thing where he's the bull rider. But I loved Tom Hardy in this, and it may have been the easier of the two roles to play. He plays basically the heavy in The Revenant, and you don't even recognize him. You put whiskers on the guy, or funny hat, and you don't even know who the guy is. Particularly when you think about his performance in Legend as the two Cray brothers, it's so different from those equally villainous roles. But he is a fine counterweight to Leonardo DiCaprio.
I also saw Hateful Eight in the theater, which I really loved. I'm a big Quentin Tarantino fan, so he can do no wrong so far as I'm concerned. Did
you feel it was a little long in the first half?
No.
You were actually caught up by it.
I love his dialogue. I love the way he gets you, it teaches you to learn the characters, you know? If I were an actor, I would want to do one of his movies just to read that dialogue. You know?
I really enjoyed the second half, and I just think it took quite a while to get to.
Well, I think because the first half is a play, is what it really is. I mean, and most of his films are. If you go back and look at any of his films, there are. I mean, the Inglourious Bastards I was watching the other night, and the first 20 minutes of that film is just one scene between two people.
And it crackles. Let me ask you a question. Did you feel that it was valid to use 70 millimeter for a room, basically a one-room story for much of the film?
Why not? If the camera was available, sure.
Do you think because of the sharpness and the grain?
Well, I don't think there was a sharpness to it. I think he liked the idea of bringing back that format, you know, and that was about it, because you can't find cameras that are 100% in good shape. But when I started watching the movie, and there's some writing up on the screen against a black background, and I saw some specks from scratches on the film, I went, wow, I love seeing that. You know, I missed that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes we do love flaws, I suppose.
Yeah, well, no,
it'll be interesting to see how that film ages. Let's put it that way. But the performances, and Walton Goggins, like I said,
this picture made him. He's now a star.
He's the best thing about Diablo, but when you compare the two films, it's ridiculous, and it almost makes me look at The Hateful Eight in a different light. Like, wow, truly the work of an auteur, despite Quentin being kind of a loon, truly an auteur, and very, very smart, and the dialogue, which is not present.
And then the disappointing film that I saw was Star Wars. I guess it's okay to be plagiaristic if you're going to steal from something you own, but there isn't an original thought in that entire film.
Well, I think all of the films have followed a template that was set up in the chapter 4.
But I can take almost every scene in that film and show you another scene in another film that is almost like it, like the spoiler scene, which we're not going to say what it is. Takes place in almost exactly the same environment.
Yeah, similar in so many ways. Although
it is similar in so many ways, it's identical. I mean, there isn't an original thought in that whole film.
Well, remember, we're talking about a movie that
we're talking about J.J. Abrams, who's the most talentless fucking movies today.
Well, let's not go crazy, but I'm not too fond of all of his work. There are things of his I like, but I will definitely praise the film for much better dialogue and much more characterization than the first three.
There wasn't much characterization, and I defy you to tell me one memorable line in the whole film. You can when you go back to Star Wars or the Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi.
Hold on, here's one that. Bleep, bloop, 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 that one droid. Oh my God, I laughed my ass off.
Yeah, let's get rid of R2-D2 and replace him with something new that J.J. Abrams owns.
Nice billiard balls. Nice balls. Anyway, I enjoyed it much more than you did, but I know you enjoyed The Hateful Eight a little more than I did.
Brooklyn is a great film that people should see.
Have you watched Diary of a Teenage Girl yet?
No, I don't have that available to me.
When you get access to it on cable or you should watch it. It's a very, very good film.
The Big Short is good, but I don't think it's great. I enjoyed it, but I don't think it's a great film.
I loved it, but I think you're a contrarian. If people really love something, you'll look for what's wrong in it, and if they don't, you'll find what's right.
That was my first film of all the ones I got to watch, and I just was, it's not smart enough. Okay, is what my problem is with it, I guess. Anyway.
I thought it was very smart. But you know what? Maybe I'm dumb these days. I do know that there's the shock of thinking, oh my God, an Adam McKay film that isn't an idiotic slapstick.
Well, you walk in with low expectations, so when it's mildly presented, you have high expectations. You know,
Well,
of course, you expect Adam McKay to suck. Okay, it's like if someday I go in and there's a J.J. Abrams film I actually like, I will be amazed.
Well, I won't agree with you, but that's the talking dog theory. It's not how well the dog talks. It's the fact that the dog talks at all.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's about it, I guess, huh? No
TV, no TV. Did you like Childhood's End?
Yeah, I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. You know, the ending was a little bit soft, but
you mean Childhood's ending?
Yeah, yeah.
What about The Expanse? Are you enjoying that?
I watched one episode. Wasn't strong enough to bring me back for another one, but we did. Girlfriend and I did, and we're just almost through binge watching Game of Thrones. We figured to make some sense out of that whole series, we'd go back to the beginning, and when you can binge watch that, it's far more enjoyable than week to week.
Well, so many characters and so many storylines. Yeah. But how about Natalie Dormer's Blue Eyes? That's the only thing I truly loved about The Forest.
Yeah. I think, but you know, I suggest that if people haven't really gone back and revisited Game of Thrones from the beginning, they should do so and do it as a binge watch, because it really then everything is, you know, you understand all the relationships instead of saying a week later, now what happened last week?
Well, maybe you ought to binge watch the Star Wars movies from the beginning.
Oh, listen, I tried that the other day, and I came out with a different kind of attitude about Star Wars by going back to the old films and even the newer three. With the original ones, the original Star Wars is not that good a movie. Mm-hmm. It was different that made it important, but his dialogue writing is horrible.
Always has been. That's why Lawrence Kasdan's work on The Empire Strikes Back was a light year leap ahead. And remember, A New Hope, that first, quote unquote, that first Star Wars movie was basically so many notes stolen from Kurosawa's The Hidden Fortress.
We all know that, and he admits that. But it came out as something wholly original. Okay, and it was a landmark in movies because it started a whole new trend in making of movies and so on. It has a special place, but as a movie, if you go back to it, it's not that good. The second one is very good. It's a terrific film, and the third one sucks. You know,
Ewoks.
You know, it portended what was going to happen with the next three, like suck. So, you know, I think we remember Star Wars far more lovingly than we really probably should. And then the next three, I tried to go back and watch like the third one to try and like it, okay? And there's just nothing to like there.
The third one being the most recent one that Lucas oversaw.
Yeah, there's just nothing there. Just nothing. So, you know, what can I say?
Hey, Happy New Year. How about that? We'll be back next week, I hope, with more films and more good ones.
I hope so, too. Tell them where they can find you.
Well, I'm on Twitter at Culture Blaster, one word. I'm also the major domo of Michael Snyder's Culture Blast on Facebook. It's a page. You can like it. You can link to Alex and I talking and some of my articles and such. And that's about it, man, other than Roku and GABNet, which is the heart of the story.
Okay, we'll see you next week, Michael.
All right.
And that's it. More GABNet coming up right now.